Hello there, and welcome to a little tutorial for NuclearCraft. I'm Tommy from TLJ Games. I make NuclearCraft, and this is a little tutorial about how to make the fission reactors, how to make them work. They're actually introduced in version 7, 0.0.0.7, but as of version 9, they've changed quite a lot. So I'm going to basically just show you through how they work. So the first thing, obviously, you're going to need is to build all the stuff. Now, to do that, you're going to need to get yourself a heavy-duty workspace. The recipe for this is some tough alloy, which requires tough alloy dust, which in turn requires a bunch of stuff, which you can make in the mod. And you also need some lead plating, which is a bit of coal dust and some lead, which isn't too bad. So you place this thing down, and it's basically a 4x4 crafting table. You can look up the recipes here, so you can get reactor casing, a nuclear furnace if you want to, your fuel cell compartments, reactor coolers, the fission controller itself that requires some other stuff. So basically all the recipes, they're in here, so you can look through them. You can also get your special armor and your special tools and your Paxel as well if you want to get that. So we go, there's heavy duty workspace. Now first of all, what you want to do is you want to place down your fission controller. So I'm just going to place it down here. Now it will actually give you a little link. If you want to click on that, then you can click there, and then you can go to the download page. I'm going to write more of a sort of wiki. It's probably in progress if you're watching this video. Now, if you want to build the most basic reactor, you can see here it says casing incomplete and everything's red. So what we need to do is we need to start actually building out the reactor. Now, a basic 1x1x1 reactor requires a fuel cell compartment here, and then it's going to have to be surrounded by these reactor casings. So you can see I've got one there, got one here, there, and there. And that is literally all we need for our basic fission reactor, a 1x1x1 reactor. So here we've got our energy meter in RF, we've got our fuel meter, how much fuel is left, and then we've got our heat meter. So basically, the fission reactor is just a way of generating RF. So we have also RF per tick and heat per tick. Now heat is something that happens when you put a fuel rod in here. You start generating heat, and heat is pretty bad. If you build your heat all the way up to the top here, your reactor will explode, and the explosion is quite big. It depends on how big the reactor is, but in general they are pretty big explosions, so you definitely don't want to gain any heat. You basically want to have zero heat or negative heat being produced, and then you can stay at zero heat the whole time. But you also want to create a lot of RF, so you've got to make sure you get that balance right. Now, to create more heat and RF, you can use graphite blocks, but if you want to cool down the reactor, you can use water or reactor coolers. You can also use lava to generate power, but it also creates a ton of heat. So it's a very inefficient way to do it. You probably just want to go off making graphite blocks. But the reactor cooler is basically a better version of water. It's about 4 times better. So you definitely want to go for these if you have got a lot of resources and you want to make the most efficient reactor possible. I've also just got myself a vibrant capacitor bank from Ender.io, and that's going to hold our power for us. Now, the most basic fission reactor, as you can see, we're going to have a little bit of trouble cooling down the reactor since we haven't got any place to put our coolant. We've absolutely got no place to actually put any coolant cells in. But I'll just show you how it runs. Now, we can actually make, at the start of the game, 3 types of a cell. In fact, there's probably 4 we can make now at the start of the game. So that these 4 are available. There's low enriched uranium, which is low enriched fuel, which is 8 uranium-238 and uranium-235. There is highly enriched, which is 4 uranium-235. There's thorium-bred uranium, which is just 9 uranium-232. And then finally there's MOX, which is 1 plutonium-239, which you can get now from mining and from killing monsters, and uranium-238. So there we go. Those are the 4 types that are available at the start of the game. Now, uranium-235 and all these different types, you can press U on them if you have any eye. You can flip back, and you can see all the uses for it. So uranium-235 fuel cell, nuclear fuel, has a base power of 300 RF per tick, lifetime of 1,200 seconds, and a base heat of 28 heat per tick. As of the next version, 0.10, you actually have a lot more information about the total amount of energy, the total amount of heat, stuff like that. So a bit more information down here. So basically, this is everything you have here, and you can look it up for all of them. So you can see this one obviously creates more RF per tick, but it also creates more heat per tick. The thorium is generally very slow burning; it has a longer lifetime, but it also creates less power, but also does create less heat. So basically it depends on what you want to go for. I'm going to basically just put the low enriched uranium fuel in. You'll see it eat up my cell. I now put the fuel in. Now the fuel's gone up to 10 million, and it will slowly drain down depending on the lifetime of the cell. All I need to do now is get a lever. And now I can just put the lever on here, and I can turn the reactor on. So you can see now the reactor is on. And we're starting to generate RF. We're generating 120 RF per tick, as it said. If we look at the use here, it said we're going to generate 300 RF per tick. That is also fixed in the next version. At the moment, 300 RF per tick is the amount of heat per tick if you make the basic reactor size, which is a 5x5x5 reactor. But as you can see, it's only generating 120 RF per tick. As I said again, that is fixed as of the next version. Okay, so we can now see that we're generating 28 heat per tick. So you can see the heat is building up, and eventually the reactor will explode. So this is definitely not a very good reactor size. We want to create a better reactor. For that, we're going to have to make a bigger reactor. So let's put down another fission reactor, and this time, instead of going for a 1x1 reactor, we're going to go for a 3x3. So let's build it out again. And by the way, you can put blocks here, so you can put a bit of decoration around the edge if you want to. I'm just building the basic shape just to show you what it looks like, just so no one gets confused. So it's always going to be a cube. It's going to be a cube in the center. As long as the cube in the center is surrounded by reactor blocks, you'll be absolutely fine. Now obviously we need our cell compartment down the middle, so that's 3 of them, and then we just finish it up on top. And that should now give us our 3x3x3 reactor, but it still says casing incomplete, and that's because you actually need to make yourself at least one upgrade. So reactor upgrades, you can see, can be made here. And if you get yourself one of them, you can put it in here, and for every one of these upgrades, you basically increase the radius of the reactor by 1. So we put 1 in here, you'll see that we've now got a 3x3x3 reactor available. So there we go. If we put 2 in, then you'll see that it won't work anymore because it's now looking for a 5x5x5. But there we go, we've now got ourselves a 3x3x3 reactor, and it's going to work. So this time, if we put ourselves a low enriched uranium fuel in, and we turn it on, you'll notice that we're now creating 240 RF per tick, but we're also creating double the amount of heat. We're also creating 56 heat per tick. So yeah, that's definitely going to be a problem. So we need to start thinking about getting rid of this heat. We've got 56 heat per tick being created. So what we can actually do is put some coolant blocks in. I'm going to just put 1 in to start, and we'll see what happens. You can see now it's gone down to 24 heat per tick. So it looks like if we put in only 2 coolant cells, and you can see they're actually draining heat latently. If we have 2 coolant cells going, then you'll see we're actually getting an overall drop in heat, -8. We can't go below 0, so if it gets to 0, then it will stay at 0. So you can see now that we're going to generate heat, no heat at all, and we're going to create RF indefinitely. So we're basically going to create 240 RF per tick for a really good amount of time. But obviously, it's uranium. We want to make sure we get a lot more power than that, so we now need to start putting some graphite in. Now, graphite increases the amount of power created, but also increases the amount of heat as well. So if we now turn this on, you'll see that we're actually creating 244 RF per tick, so 4 RF per tick more, but we are creating now a little bit extra heat. We're creating 16 more heat per tick. So let's, for example, try and balance this out. We want to have maybe some more graphite blocks in here, and then have some coolant. A couple of coolant, and some graphite, and some coolant, and some graphite. Let's see if that does the trick. Okay, we're still creating 8 heat per tick, so what that means is I need to get rid of one of these graphites, and now I should be fine. Now you can see that we're getting an overall -8 heat per tick again. I could just put another coolant cell in there, but there's no point. You can see now that we're actually minusing 40 heat per tick, and either way we're going to go back to 0 again, so it's absolutely safe. But you can now see that we're gaining a little bit extra RF per tick. We're getting another 56 RF per tick. So it's basically graphite is a good way to get the maximum efficiency out of your fuels. And this will matter a lot more when you get to the massive size of the reactors. The biggest size of reactor you can get is 17 by 17 by 17. And at that stage, the amount of graphite that you put in the reactor really does have a massive impact on the efficiency of your reactor. You can almost triple, I think you can really increase the amount of power you get from one fuel rod if you add graphite to your reactor. But at the same time, depending on the size of the reactor, each block of graphite increases the amount of heat you create by a lot. So do be sure to be careful and never get to this a million heat. So there we go, that's basically how the reactors work. Just to show you one more size, what I'm going to do is I'm going to destroy all this again. And let's try and create a really big sized reactor. Let's try and create like a 9x9, just to show you how crazy it can get. Now what we can do if we want to make a really big reactor is we can look up the builder's wand from extra utilities. And we just have to count. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's go for 11 by 11. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then we just have to build it out. One important thing to note about these reactors is that if the explosion size does increase with the size of the reactor. So if you have a very big reactor and you're generating too much heat, then you're going to create an absolutely massive explosion. So you definitely want to be careful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And now we put the top on. First of all, we want to put our cell in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And let's finally complete this. So right now you also notice that I'm just showing you how the LEU fuel rods work. I'm using just them because they're the simplest ones. They're basically the standard type of fuel, but I'm going to in a minute just get into the details of the other types of fuel and show you what the massive differences are. So let's get rid of this thing. Let's put down another fission fuel rod, fission controller. Now because it's 11 by 11, we've got to go from 1 by 1 by 1 to 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. So we've got to have 5 reactor upgrades. There we go. So 11 by 11. Any less or any more stops it from working. So you need to have 5 in there. So now you can see we've got an 11 by 11 by 11 reactor. As you can see, it's pretty big. This isn't the biggest size, as I said. The biggest size is 17 by 17 by 17. But this is still pretty big. This time, if we put an LEU fuel in, you'll notice that the amount of power and heat we create is a lot bigger. So now we're creating 720 RF per tick, a lot more than before, but we're also creating a lot more heat per tick. So now we need to think more about generating and preventing heat. 168 heat per tick is quite a lot. So in order to negate that, we're going to need to have, I think, possibly 5 coolant cells, maybe 6. Each coolant cell negates 32. So we're actually we're going to have a little bit more heat over. So yeah, you can see we're still generating a little bit of heat, but we've negated most of the heat at this point. Let's just add one more coolant cell. And now you can see we're absolutely fine again. So we're generating 720 RF per tick, but we've also got no heat generated as well. We're going to be safe. So as soon as we go to a massive size of reactor, which is very expensive, these casings are not cheap, we can start generating a lot more power. But as you can see, this is a tiny fraction of the entire volume of this thing. Inside an 11 by 11 by 11 reactor, there's a total of 1,320 blocks to place in. It doesn't look like it, but there really is about 1,320 blocks to place things in. And in here, you can place your graphite, your water, your coolant cells, and you want to try and find the most efficient design you can to try and generate the most amount of power without blowing up anything. That's basically the way this mod works, is you want to try and find the most efficient way to do stuff. Now you'll notice that if I break this and use thorium instead, thorium power, you'll notice that I'm generating a lot less power first of all, but also a lot less heat per tick. So really I only need one coolant cell to make sure that this reactor is safe now. I'm generating 192 RF per tick and no heat. Negative heat basically just means no heat. So there we go. That is the way thorium works, but if we want to say make something like a high energy proton, high energy proton, I don't even know where I got that from. If we want to use highly enriched plutonium, you can see that we're going to need some plutonium 242 and 239. 239, I said, can be got from ore and monster drops, but it can also be got from decomposing some depleted cells. You can see, oh, hang on. Oh, maybe not. Maybe you can't get that from depleted cells. Maybe you just need to get it directly from the ore. Okay? So what we can do is we can put a HEP239 cell in. By the way, that must be a bug then. I need to fix that because for some reason plutonium 239 is not being generated. Oh, maybe it's because small lumps of plutonium 239 are available. As we will see, isotope separator, you can see that you can actually get small lumps of plutonium 239 by isotope separating the depleted MOX cells, also LEU-233 cells, LEP-241 cells, and LEU-235 fuel cells. You can see you're getting a little bit of plutonium 239. So the depleted cells are what's left over after the fission reactor has finished with the certain type of fuel. So for example, if I put my HEP239 fuel cell in, I'll get a depleted HEP239 cell, which I can then use to get back some plutonium 242 and some plutonium 238. And plutonium 238 is very, very important. As you can see, the recipe for that, you don't really get that much. The only way you can get it is by using HEP241. And as you're about to see, HEP241 and HEP239 are very, very dangerous fuels. If I put some in, you'll notice that the amount of power I'm going to get is incredible. But also the amount of heat I get is very big as well. So here we go, we'll turn it on. You can see that we're starting to generate 5,008 heat per tick, so we need to turn this off because this is generating far too much heat. 5,008 RF per tick. We're generating a lot of RF per tick, 6,480, but we're also generating 5,000 heat per tick. And the only way you can negate that heat, obviously, is by using a lot of coolant cells. So it's very, very difficult to make that a more efficient fuel. But as you saw, we were generating an absolute ton of power. So it's basically a really, really good fuel, but it's very, very expensive to maintain it because you're going to need a lot of coolant. So that's basically the way you want to run. You can try and work out the best designs for certain types of fuels in certain shapes of reactors. So there is a little bit of maths, but it's fun to try and play around. And also an explosion is pretty fun. So I'll show you that at the end of the episode, or at least the end of this tutorial. The last thing you probably want to know about, we're very, very close to the end anyway. The last thing you probably want to know about is that, as I said before, you can just decorate the outsides. The best way I like to actually decorate these is by using these things. They're just little tubes, reinforced tubing. They will have a use in the future, but for now they just look quite nice, so you can actually do some decorating. They look pretty good around the outside. They have a nice touch. They fit pretty well. So that's basically the way you can decorate your reactors if you want to. And the final thing you probably want to know is that you can just put capacitors and energy cells next to it, and the energy will flow out of it if I do this right. Let's turn this into an input. And you can see now that all of the RF has flowed into here. So now all the RF is going into here. You can see that we're generating enough heat. And now, as the power starts to build up, we're going to have an explosion. And it's a very, very big explosion for an 11 by 11 reactor. It is an absolutely huge reaction, huge, massive meltdown. It's 11 by 11, which means this is going to be a disastrous explosion. You definitely don't want something like this to happen in your world. Look at this. Look at the amount of XP that just dropped. I don't know where all that XP came from, but sure. So yeah, this is what can happen if your reactor explodes. You definitely don't want something like this to happen. Remember, that was only an 11 by 11 by... Look at all the shapes that it made. That's really weird. We've got this weird arch going on here. That is really weird. We've got these little tunnels going on. But yeah, as you can see, it's a pretty big explosion. And a 17 by 17 by 17 is even bigger. So definitely you don't want your reactors to explode, because this could happen to your base. But as I said, it's very simple to make sure that your reactors don't explode. Just keep the heat to 0 and you'll be absolutely fine. But you'll be punished if you don't try and do that hugely. So yeah, be careful when building these reactors. But they can generate a lot of heat, because they can generate a lot of heat, but you can generate a lot of power. At the moment I've got a 17 by 17 by 17 reactor using HEP fuel, and it's generating about 20,000. Maybe more than that. I can't remember how much. Oh, it might be way more than that. I think it's like 96,000 RF per tick it's creating at the moment. So you can get a huge amount of energy from these things, but you've got to be very, very careful that you set it up correctly, otherwise something like this could happen. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little spotlight and understand a bit more how reactors work. As I said, I want to try and get the documentation done, because that's one thing that this mod is short on at the moment, is documentation about how the mod actually works. I'm sure I'll get to that eventually. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you in this next spotlight of NuclearCraft. Goodbye.